All right, so looking at the bar direction solver. So let's just add one to the board here. So you'll notice this bar direction here actually says _1, right? And again, from the previous question, I said that you shouldn't, your solver should not have the same name. You should always give them a unique name here, right? And so I already have one called bar direction from the previous question here. So when I made a new one, right, BloodHound automatically just started numbering it, so that way we don't have two with the same name there. So you can have the same name. That's not, it's just a name, so it doesn't do anything other than provide a name to identify. So that's fine. So we can do that there. But just to be safe, all right, I'll just add the word solver at the end there. All right, so let's cover what the bar direction solver does. So in its simplest state, right, the bar direction just tells you, is it an up bar or a down bar, right? So when it's an up bar, as we can see with this Renko chart, right, you get a long output, right, because most trading ideas, right, most trading systems here, you want to go long with an up bar, or you want to go short, right, with a down bar, right? So I think it's safe to say that most trading systems out there, most trading ideas, methodologies, whatever you want to call them, are a with the trend type of signal, right? And so as a general rule, right, all of the solvers, their default outputs are designed to output with the trend direction, right? So just as a general rule, that's what these are all defaulted to. So like, for example, the crossover solver, right? That's defaulted to give you a long output when the faster crosses the slower, right, moving average or something like that, right? So there we go. So the bar direction is just a quick and easy way to identify the bar direction. Now, of course, you can reverse that. So maybe you're building a counter trend system, and so you want to go short on an up bar, but you want to go long on a down bar. So you can reverse that by using the swap modifiers here. Right? And there we go. So now all these up bars now have a short output, right? So again, if you're building a counter trend system, right, the chances are you might be looking for an up bar that triggers a short signal, right, to go counter trend. So, all right, so there you go. Swap just simply, right, swaps what is normally a long output for a short output, right? Now that is totally different than invert. I don't think invert's not going to do anything on a Renko chart, right? So invert would be different. I'm going to turn this all off on a minute chart. So let's switch to a minute chart. There we go. Ah, perfect. This is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for that doji, right, that has no output, right? Right, so we can see up bars have a long output, down bars have a short output, and if we invert that, right, now up bars have a short output, but that doji that had no output has long and short, right, because it inverted it, right? So normal, right, non-inverted, right, there's no output on a doji, right, because there's no bar direction. And so if we invert no output, let's turn that back on, then you get long and short, right? So that's the difference between swap, right, which reverses the long and the short, but invert, it's a literal invert. So, and of course, enable or disable, right? So you can turn a node off temporarily if you want to. All right, so now let's go into the actual settings here. So the behavior, a behavior is a quick and easy way to either say, I want this solver to only give me the long outputs, right? So now we can see there's no short output anymore, right? So all the down bars, there's no short output for the down bars, because we said, okay, show me the long output only, right? Or technically it's only evaluating, the code internally is only evaluating the long side of the calculation, right? Or of course we could say, okay, only show me the short output, right? So getting a little technical here, but this is helpful. This can be helpful to remember in certain circumstances, because those who are more technically minded get kind of baffled by this. But the long output is a separate calculation from the short output. So BloodHound is actually doing two separate calculations, right? It's doing one calculation for the long output and a separate calculation for the short output, right? That is how BloodHound is able to do its fuzzy logic, right? When you're doing fuzzy logic type calculations, the long and the short have to be separate calculations. So it requires two separate calculations there, right? And the other thing is, that should kind of clue you in that it's two separate calculations, is that it's two separate plots, right? It's not one plot switching from green to red. It's actually two separate plots. And so each plot has its own calculation. So, all right. So that's the evaluate. So sometimes, you may want to build a solver that, where all you want is the long output, because maybe the short output from that solver kind of messes up, the rest of the logic there. Right? So, all right. Now, let's see. Minimum bar size, right? So right now, right, the minimum bar size is 0, but really a 0 bar size actually doesn't have an output there. So if we increase this to 1, 0.1, no, 1, well, actually, I guess, you could, on some instruments, like oil, actually sometimes trade in a fraction of a tick. I don't know how they're doing that, but maybe it's the data feed kind of amalgamating trades together. But if you've ever traded oil, you have definitely seen ticks come in at a fraction of a tick. So, but normally, you might want to use this to say, okay, I'm only looking for bars with a 5-tick minimum bar size. And so there we go. Right? So here we go. It's a down bar, but that's a really small body. Right? So no output. So that guy, right? That body, looks like it's about 1 tick in size. Right? Again, there's a body maybe 2 ticks in size. Maybe that's 1, I don't know. But, you can use this to filter out bars with a minimum body size. So, and of course you can use either ticks, you could use points, Say, okay, there we go. I need a body that's at least 5 points. There we go. So that kind of strips out a lot of those. Right, so whatever it is, you have some choices here, for the measurement unit there. So ATRs, whatever you want. Let's see here. All right, the mode here, all or nothing. So that really pertains. Let me put this back to 0 there. So the mode here really only comes into play when you're counting a certain number of bars. So let's count 4 bars. 4 bars. All right. So we need 4 bars in a row in the same direction. So yeah, there we go. So look, oops. First up bar, second up bar, third up bar, and now fourth up bar. All right, so once we get to the 4th bar, right, same thing over here. Here's our first down bar, second, third, and 4th down bar, right? And so once you get to that 4th bar, it's identified. And sometimes, right, if you have a long run there, right, so here's our 4th bar and our 5th bar, right? Because what this is doing is the number of bars, right, is it's always looking back. So think of it this way, right? So here's the 4th bar, and so it's looking back saying, okay, yep, there's the first up bar, second up bar, third up bar, and 4th up bar, right? So in the code, you're actually counting backwards. And so when you get to another up bar, right, the way you know that this is a 4th up bar is, again, you actually start counting backwards, right? So as long as you continue to get up bars, right, you're going to continue to get a long output. So when I had that Renko chart, right, that clearly showed a lot of, up bars or down bars in a row. Let's see if I have some more examples. Yeah, here we go. So there we go. So we have a bunch of down bars. So again, once we get to the 4th down bar, as long as you continue to have a down bar, then you're going to continue to have a short output, right? But then as soon as you get a bar in the opposite direction, then when you're looking back, right, it breaks the counting there. So there you go. So there's counting 4 bars, but that is using all or nothing. So if you are building a fuzzy logic system, you can put it on %. And so now I have to stretch this up there. So now what it's doing is, remember, it's looking backwards. So let's do this, right? So we're on this bar, and we look back 4 bars. Well, look, right here's a down bar. Right. So the percentage, is looking back and going, oh, okay, there's 2 down bars within this 4 bar counting. So that's half. So half of these 4 bars are down bars. Half of them. So that would be 0.5. Right? And if you go over here, let's go 1 bar back. Right? Well, this bar is obviously not a down bar, but when it looks back on the last 4 bars, Well, there is one down bar. So that's right. So 1/4 of these last 4 bars is a down bar, 1/4. So there you go. So you get 0.25 or a quarter. All right. So as a percentage of the last 4 bars, right, one of them being a down bar, so 25% of these last 4 bars is a down bar. Right. So that's what the percentage is doing, is it's telling you how many bars, were down bars versus how many bars were up bars, right? So the long output is at 0.75, right? And that's because 3 of the 4 bars were up bars. So 75% of these last 4 bars were up bars. So, right. There. Right. So the long output is at 0.75 or 3/4, right? And the short output is at 1/4 or 0.25 because only one of those 4 bars was a down bar. So, yeah. So the mode only comes into effect when your number of bars, right? Basically, think of this as kind of a look back period, right? The number of bars is like a look back period. So if I set that back down to 1, then obviously the percent isn't going to do anything because you're just counting 1 bar. There we go, right? So, all right, and now the signals for dojis. Don't think I'm going to find any dojis here. All right, so let me switch this over to a range chart. All right, so with range charts, there we go. I could find dojis a lot more often on a range chart. All right, so there we have it, right? So that is a dragon. Yeah, that's a dragonfly, right? So the signals for dojis, right? Really, this was put in, this option was actually put in specifically for range charts. So, this was like the last additional, enhancement that was added, or I should say the last enhancement that was added to the bar direction was this signals for dojis here. Because, right, originally the bar direction didn't have this. And, on a range chart, basically a doji on a range chart, most traders consider that as an up bar, right, or a down bar. So you can either say no signal, so there you go, so there's a doji, right, and so no output. And let's see if I can find a tombstone. There we go. Oh, there's a bunch of tombstones. There we go, 3 tombstones in a row. There we go. Oh, and a dragonfly. All right, cool. Let's get both of these. There. There we go. Yeah. So when you're on a range chart, I mean, obviously this does happen on all the other charts, right? It might happen on a minute chart, volume chart, tick chart, whatever. Right, but you do have that option to, well, actually it's on by default, so that gravestones or dragonfly candlestick bars are considered to have a bar direction. So there we go. So I put that back on, and there we go. So that dragonfly, right, is considered an up bar, and that tombstone is considered a down bar. So there you go. That signals for dojis is pretty simple there. And again, this is really added because you see those a lot on a range chart, but it does work on all chart, on all bar types. Yes. All right, now lastly, the start bars ago. Essentially, this is doing the same thing as a displacement does for indicators, right? So you know that, let's open up the volume MA, right? And you have this displacement. There you go. All right, you can enable displacement, and that shifts things forward in time, right? And that essentially is kind of what the start bars go is doing. Let's see here. I'm going to put this back onto a Unirenko chart. That makes it a lot easier to visualize. There. All right, so right now, pretty simple. The bar direction is just simply telling us, the bars, a single bar's direction, right? So if we start using the bar as a go, like I'll set it to 1, and now we can see, right, that this down bar no longer has a short output. And that's because it's starting, the bar direction is starting 1 bar ago or 1 bar back, right? So it's actually looking at this up bar, right? So this is essentially, this starts looking at the bar direction X number of bars back, right? So if I set this to 2, right? So now on this bar, if we look 2 bars back, right? 1, 2, there you go. This 2 bars back, it was a down bar. But on this one, if I look 2 bars back, well, it's still an up bar, right? So essentially, another way you could think of this is, if you want to take the bar direction from X number of bars back and pull it forward onto the current bar, that's what this does. All right. And so again, if I set it to 3, there we go, right? So, so on the 4th bar, we get a short output because it's looking 3 bars back. 1, 2, 3. There's our reversal. Right. And on this bar, right, this bar with the long output, it's looking 3 bars, or it's starting 3 bars back. So 1, 2, 3, and that was an up bar. Right, starting this one, 1, 2, 3, that was an up bar. So, all right, and that does it for the bar direction, right? That's I think it's the most simplest solver there in the toolkit there, but it's also heavily used. Yeah, so the bar direction is quite frequently used, in a lot of systems.